It amazes me every time around this time of year, every year, the GOP, the MAGA, the right wing, they just love to requote Dr. King, whether it's in a Facebook post or a Twitter post where they want to say about it on Fox News or Breitbart or whatever. They just love doing it because they think it's like a mask for them, basically. A mask. They put on the mask and they say, okay, I got the mask on. Nope, I hope nobody can see the racist underneath. But we see them every time that mask is off. They can quote Dr. King to the blue in the face, but it won't change what they are. And their actions show what they are. To illustrate that point, I'm going to give you an article from OccupyDemocrats.com. Dr. King, how the GOP misappropriates MLK's words while opposing what he stood for. It's written by Ross Runfield. Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, gave the obligatory nod to Martin Luther King Day on Monday by retweeting Republican Congressman Wesley Hunt's video of a segment of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. Hunt wrote in his tweet, as the leader of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King traversed the nation in his quest for equality and lost his life fighting for the principles that each of us be judged by the content of our character rather than the color of our skin. Unquote. Other GOPers actually joined in. Here are just a few examples you're seeing here and now. And obviously, none of these people have any clue of what Martin Luther King sacrificed his life for, because these are all the usual suspects in the GOP that have damaged this country and what he stood for. Perhaps you noticed that the Republicans tend to zero in on two ideas from King: speaking up even when what you know is right may be met with severe opposition, and judging people by their character rather than by their skin color. Why do they do this? Well, because they like to make it appear as if Dr. King would have supported what they support. Opposing progressive legislation and refusing to acknowledge the racial history and America's history of problems with racism and bigotry. Yeah, that's right, Sir Huckabee Sanders. I'm talking about you. But don't worry, darling. I'll get to you later. Your ass is mine later. I'll get to you later. Some have taken even further. In October, Carrie Lake claimed that MLK would have been a MAGA. Quoting her, "I'm a true believer that MLK, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., were alive today. If JFK, former President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, were alive today, if our founding fathers were alive today, that they would be America First Republicans," unquote. Dr. King's daughter, Bernice King, sought to set her straight. "Dear Carrie Lake, what you share here is false and dismissive of Daddy's seminal work and beliefs, including ending and preventing voter suppression and treating all, including immigrants, with dignity." A year earlier, Mrs. King tried correcting Florida Governor Ron DeSantis when he repurposed Dr. King as an anti-woke advocate. "This is an absolute misappropriation and misuse of my father's words, Governor DeSantis. Daddy wasn't working for a society that shuns truth about history and racism. He wrote and spoke about his own deep disappointment in America. It was his dream that we would eliminate racism. Yet such corrections can be like speaking wind into an ocean. Republicans unfortunately often suffer from what you might call KDS, King derangements. Excuse me. You know how they all like to say that we have TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Well, these guys have KDS, King delusional syndrome. The symptoms include someone believing Martin Luther King would be a Republican today, taking King's words completely out of context, and having extreme cognitive dissonance or ignoring certain things that the great Reverend said that might fly in the face of one's preconceived notions. This is pretty academic. By purposely taking King's words out of context and misrepresenting them, the GOP can pretend that they're not besmirching his legacy, a legacy many Republicans fought against honoring. For instance, Senator Chuck Grassley in 1983 voted against the creation of MLK Day. Yet for all the big King talk, they go against him in practically every way when it's time to show their true colors, when it's time to take that mask off, if you follow my metaphor earlier in this video. Last January, just by way of for instance, they stymied 2 voting rights bills in the Senate that would have improved voter access and brought the redress to the Supreme Court decision in Shelby County versus Holden, which therein the court essentially dismantled the requirements imposed by the Voting Rights Act, allowing southern states to change their voting laws and procedures at will without the approval from the Department of Justice. The Freedom to Vote Act would have lengthened early voting times to and increased absentee voting, made Election Day into a national holiday, so people would not have to take off work to vote. Provide legal means to initiate a national policy of all registration, and stipulated that felons who have done their time no longer be denied their right to vote. The John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, named of course from the not too recently deceased congressman and civil rights hero who marched on Bloody Sunday, and of course with Dr. King himself, would have made it more difficult for Republicans to continue to close polling stations and engage in other tactics designed to dissuade people from voting. Not a surprise, Republicans shot both bills down. They've also frequently misused King's words to promote the idea they be against critical race theory. Republicans have portrayed CRT as hate whitey, a hate whitey approach that teaches kids to resent America. Again, don't worry, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, your ass is mine sooner or later. The truth, of course, is that it is simply a lens through which to perceive how racism has impacted American history. GOPers and the MAGA, however, like to pretend that Martin Luther King would have been against any discussions of race, that somehow would have violated his, quote, content of their character, unquote, assertion. But let's look at what Dr. King actually said. In his novel, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? King spoke about the white backlash and an unwillingness by a certain segment of the population to embrace progress. What is the source of this perennial indecision and valediction? It lies in the congenital deformity of racism that has crippled the nation from its inception. The roots of racism are very deep in America. Historically, it was also acceptable in the national life that today it only lightly burdens the consensus. No one surveying the moral landscape of our nation can overlook the hideous and pathetic wreckage of commitment twisted and turned to 1,000 shapes under the stress of prejudice and irrationality, unquote. Certainly sounds like he has no issues whatsoever when investigating America's history from a clear, honest perspective, which includes discussing racism, of course. Undoubtedly, Dr. King would have been challenged to extend his love to many of GOP's members today, though he would have tried. He stood for learning, equality, economic opportunity, understanding, and compassion. They stand for anger, division, corporate greed, and the promotion of a nonsensical narratives over the facts. Lauren Boebert, for one, who quoted Dr. King earlier in this video, you saw her tweet, is not only an advocate for the Second Amendment, but often flaunts her gun ownership in support of a gun-obsessed culture. While understandably Dr. King briefly tried to get a gun permit to protect his family in the 1950s, he soon resolved to be against gun ownership, concerned about the potential for violence. And it was a gun that ended that beautiful man's life far too early. He fought for unions and fair pay. Republicans fight for tax breaks for corporations and the wealthy and the rich. He fought to make sure people can vote. They are currently fighting to take people's right to vote away. He fought against violence. They turned a blind eye to violence. And I'm not just talking about January 6th. I'm talking about every mass shooting that has happened in this country for years, for decades even. And while the GOP can claim, or at least try to claim, that King would somehow have been on their side, they've created a culture of racism so pervasive in their party that recent YouGov polls found that only 39% of people who identify themselves as Republican say that Martin Luther King should be a federal holiday, with 37% saying no, and the rest of that percentage not so sure. Mind you, they have no problem, no issue whatsoever with the celebration of slave-owning and slave-trading white men. Like the founder of this country, the man who discovered America, Christopher Columbus, and one of the founding fathers they so really revere, George Washington. They had no problem pushing for remembrance days of Confederate soldiers, traitors to this country during the Civil War. So when Republicans try to misappropriate King's words, King himself, for their own use, do not let them. Because truth does matter. It may be frustrating to see, but I'd like you to keep something else that Dr. King said in mind. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. That is why I write, temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumph, unquote.